How are great legacies made? I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. I'm going to share with you some of the background strategies to cultivate a historic family name or a legacy style relationship. Now, you can use this to create a legacy in your corporation for marketing purposes. You can use this in your community to develop influence, or simply use it to understand why some family names tend to have all the breaks. You know how it is. There's that family name in your community, and they've been around forever, and there's lore and there's stories and there's history about this family. And when they speak, everyone seems to listen. Yet you get to know these individuals, and they're no different than anybody else. In fact, some of these families are not wealthy at all. Many of these families have no real influence in their monetary side. And if they were taken out of their community and put in some different community, they don't have the skills to survive. Now, why is it that their family name is known and they're the number one person to go to, and they're constantly on the tip of everybody's tongues? Well, there's a very simple engineered process that can be done to create this kind of legacy. In fact, many affluent and well-known families have done this either before they have political aspirations, so they're thinking about running for office, if they're developing a business and they want influence or they want cooperation from the local community, or otherwise their family name has been tarnished in some way and they want to restore that family name. Now, it's beyond me to tell you whether this is a good thing to do or not, but there is a simple concept that you can do from a current position if your family has not been cultivating that name over time. Now, again, why would you want a family name? Well, very often that family seems to be lucky because they are familiar, not because they're anything special. And I'm not discounting people who are legitimately contributing to society, but usually those who contribute most are the least known among the public. But we'll talk about it in another episode. The key thing here is if you want a family to be known and you want them to be respected, it is a little bit more than what you see in the movies where you just, keep your nose clean or you know who to have to bury the bodies. But essentially, it is a historical connection with something meaningful in that community. So you're looking for a thread where that family has made a significant historical contribution that can be created into a narrative. Now, this is extremely important in politics. This is extremely important in social influence. But essentially, that family is known because there's some kind of story that has been conveyed and is easy to tell that positions that family as someone of value. So let's say you're starting a bed and breakfast. There are many bed and breakfasts that have the placard that says, George Washington slept here. Now, if you think about it historically, George Washington traveled a lot as a politician. So did all the signers of the U.S. Constitution. They traveled a lot for what they did. I would imagine they stayed at resorts and hotels or family homes. Well, any of those family homes can have that legacy connected if they have the evidence of the stay. Some people do this with haunted houses, by the way. They make a location more important by telling the story of the historic owner and the potential haunting of the property. And there becomes this story around this location. Well, you can do the same thing with your family. In my family, one of my ancestors wrote speeches for Abraham Lincoln. So we have evidence that he worked in the White House during the Abraham Lincoln administration and wrote speeches. Now, if I wanted to cultivate this more, I could find out which speeches he wrote, which, by the way, he was probably on a team of 4 or 5 different people who wrote speeches or reviewed speeches, not the speech writer for Abraham Lincoln. But the ambiguous nature of the story could turn that into a single sentence that justifies myself as a copywriter having a genetic quality that makes me better at that skill. Do you see what I'm doing here? There's something historic in that family that would be a good enough excuse for an implied genetic benefit. Now, if you see a family that has always been the quality of the family and has always contributed to the best causes, that air of I'm better than you, you can actually use that to create a prominent family. You simply have to find the historical connections with other prominent people. So you can survey the area, find out who's already prominent, and then find the historical connections and tie that to our new family. Now, the new family would have these legitimate historical connections. They have to be legitimate, except they will narrate around them using the historical society, using social groups, using a few well-placed donations to raise that story up. Again, the story has to be believable, it has to be consistent, and it has to be third-party verified. Now, again, one of my ancestors writing speeches for Abraham Lincoln doesn't mean he wrote the Gettysburg Address. But that might be in the mind of an end user who might think that that's the case. I've had ancestors on another side of the family who wrote books. If that's the reason why I'm writing books today, it might not be the reason. It might be a discovered reason. I can connect that we come from a long line of authors. Okay? The truth of it is, if you start doing genealogy in your own family, you're going to discover that you come from a long line of something. Now, it could be Civil War prisoners, or it could be other things that aren't as tasteful. However, if you can extract that story as part of a lesson or a part of a reason why you should be chosen over another, then it works really well. Now, how do we convey that story? Well, first off, we can't go around telling people that, there's a cartoon that makes a joke. The kid's going around and says, "My daddy owns a car dealership. My dad," you can't go around like that. You really have to connect the narrative and include that in the lore of the community in which your subject is being elevated. This could be my grandfather owned a business, and I'm not saying my grandfather, but maybe this person's grandfather owned a business, and you've gone through a long journey and found yourself back in that same business. That becomes an origin story. So when someone says, "How did you get into this business?" the response isn't, "Well, I just kind of stumbled into it." No, it's, "Hey, when I was growing up, I heard my grandfather had a similar business and I didn't think anything of it. And my father did something different. But over the years, I started learning more about this unique business, and I really enjoy serving customers in this business. And that's why I'm here." Obviously, you'll be more eloquent than that. But the key of the thing is you're connecting a historical anchor. So prominent families have a historical lineage. You're connecting a reason why prominent families tend to do things on purpose. And you can also connect some kind of like in this case, it's a prodigal son story. I had rejected what the family was doing in the business until I realized the reasons why. I came back to it and learned from the masters. And even if you're disconnected from the original founders, you can still have that story. There are many, many of these types of stories. And when I sit with clients who are doing this either as a public relations consultants, they're doing this for their clients, or they're doing this for their own family. Perhaps it's a family office and your ancestors were dirt poor, but now you want to raise them up because of the ethical lessons they shared with you. Sometimes a family office will develop that narrative and that history. There are families who contribute to historical societies so that they can have this research done for them by a third party rather than making it up. Never make this stuff up, by the way. There's always something interesting in everybody's family. But ultimately, this starts creating a different attitude for the members of the family in their approach to success. And that's probably what I'm going to leave you with, is that when you understand the ancestry that got you to where you are today, both the successes and the challenges that they've had, you gain a better perspective for your own future. So I always recommend reading biographies, but one of the things I don't talk about in public much is the writing of biographies. If you can read biographies and understand the context of a time period, and then you're doing genealogy on your own family, you're going to have an opportunity to write small biographies about historical people in your family. Did you know that my grandfather was a nuclear physicist? He didn't work on the Manhattan Project, but he worked with those people on the first U.S. nuclear submarine. That's actually pretty exciting. And that's one of the reasons that I got into science, about hearing these stories and hearing about his experiences. Like, for example, the first nuclear submarine was cooled with liquid metal. Well, that's interesting. And I gained this science and technology leaning through these historical stories. Why not give them credit? And so in your own life, whether you're working with your own family or you're working with a family office, you want to be able to map out that lineage. You want to be as honest as possible, and it doesn't hurt to point out the faults. If you point out the faults, you got to have a reason why you've transformed due to this knowledge. So if there was a fallout, for example, if there was embezzlement in your family and they went to jail, you don't want that stigma following the family, but you can't hide it, because today somebody will pull ancestry.com and realize, hey, isn't your uncle Jeffrey Dahmer? They'll figure it out if there's something like that going on. But the key is this narration of history can give you significance. It can give you reach into a marketplace. It can help you reestablish and gain buy-in because you can do this to lift up your customers. So your customer isn't just any old person. This is the grandson of so-and-so, and they're in a family business, and they're smart people, and you can raise them up to help in your own marketing. There's all kinds of things you can do with this. But ultimately, it's a concept that very few people even think about. They just kind of accept as a fact that certain family names are prominent, and they're better than you. You're not being told that they're better than you. You're just thinking, well, they've always been members of the best country clubs. Oh, they've always owned the land around here. Oh, they make all the decisions about what can happen and what can't happen. No, really, they're affluent just like you. And we've put this mythology, we put this historical stories, we've heard the same stories over and over. They're friends of these friends, and they all, run in certain circles. I'm telling you, you can cultivate your own circle. You can cultivate your own family name, and you can do it in a legitimate and honest way that positions you for greater opportunities. If you have the choice between working with any old person that lives in your town and the family name of your town, who would you want to work with? I'd much rather work with a prominent family. They have some track record. They have something to lose if they make a mistake. Would you rather just work with any old builder, or a builder that's been known to build quality homes? That story is created. It's there, whether it's talked about or not, but it's created as part of the marketing, the personal image or brand of that family, and ultimately you can cultivate it for yourself or for others. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. I'm here to help you transform business relationships into profits guaranteed. If you have questions about what I've shared here today, if you have concerns about making your family prominent, and the ethical concerns about that, I'd love to hear from you. When you visit the website at www.insidestrategicrelations.com, simply contact us, send us a note, and I'd love to hear from you and love to answer your questions, because these methods are real and they work in so many contexts, and many people are struggling through their life because they don't know how to create influence. They don't know how to get their good name out there, and they don't know how to leverage through communications that relationship building strategy of being someone. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations.